The siren of the old pickup truck echoed through the quiet morning air as Gabriel Holt gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands. His knuckles whitened, his breath unsteady. The road ahead shimmered in the early daylight, but inside his chest was a storm that hadn't calmed in years. The nightmares still came, screams in the desert, the sound of gunfire, and the face of the man he couldn't save. That morning, Gabriel wasn't driving to a destination. He was driving to keep his mind from breaking. A single father, a combat veteran, and a man quietly fighting battles no one could see. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of ordinary heroes, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Stories like this one remind us that even the smallest acts of courage can change a life forever. Gabriel had returned from service 6 years ago, carrying more scars inside than outside. His wife, Mia, couldn't handle the silence that followed him home. Within months she left, leaving behind their little girl, Harper, barely 4 at the time. Now 10, she was Gabriel's reason for waking up every morning. Every lunchbox packed, every bedtime story read, was a small victory against the loneliness clawing at him. But money was tight. He worked at a hardware store during the day, took security shifts at night, and still came home to a refrigerator humming louder than his own heartbeat. The neighbors saw a quiet man who kept to himself. They didn't see the nights he sat on the porch, holding his daughter's baby blanket, wondering if he was doing enough, if he was enough. That particular morning, the air smelled of rain. Harper had gone off to school with a bright pink backpack bouncing behind her. Gabriel was running late for work, speeding down a narrow road that cut through the edge of town. That's when he saw it. A car flipped upside down in the shallow ditch, smoke twisting into the air like a ghostly signal. His instincts took over before his mind caught up. He slammed the brakes, jumped out, and sprinted through the wet grass. Inside the crushed vehicle was a woman, unconscious, blood tracing a thin line down her forehead. He could hear the faint crackle of the engine, smell gasoline leaking into the soil. "Stay with me," he muttered under his breath, yanking at the jammed door. Memories flashed, explosions, fire, brothers in uniform trapped under metal. The fear clawed at him, but he fought it. One pull, two, and the door gave way with a screech. He dragged the woman out just as the front of the car burst into flames. The heat licked his back as he shielded her body with his own. They fell onto the grass together, coughing, the sound of burning rubber roaring behind them. When the paramedics arrived, Gabriel refused treatment. He gave his statement, brushed off the burns on his arms, and watched as they loaded the woman into the ambulance. He didn't even know her name, but something in the way her hand had twitched when he lifted her, like she was reaching for hope, stuck in his mind. Days passed. Gabriel went back to work, though his co-workers noticed he was quieter than usual. Then one afternoon, a nurse showed up at the store, holding a folded note. "She wanted you to have this," she said softly before leaving. Inside, written in shaky handwriting, were 6 words, "You saved me. Please visit soon." At first he hesitated. He wasn't used to being seen, not as a hero, not even as a man worth thanking. But that weekend Harper convinced him to go. "Dad," she said, her voice small but sure, "if someone saved you, wouldn't you want to tell them thank you?" So he went. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet fear, but when he walked into room 214, the woman looked up from her bed with the warmest eyes he'd seen in years. "You must be Gabriel," she said softly. Her name was Evelyn March, a photographer who had been driving to a nearby wildlife reserve when her car hit a slick patch of road. She lived alone, too, she explained, a life of pictures and empty rooms. Their first meeting was brief, but something about her lingered. She had a way of speaking that felt like sunlight through heavy clouds. Over the next few weeks, Gabriel found excuses to check in, bringing her books, helping her with paperwork, even driving her home once she was discharged. Harper liked her instantly, chatting about her drawings and school adventures, and for the first time in years Gabriel felt laughter echo in his home. Still, part of him resisted. Veterans like him didn't get fairy tale endings. He'd seen too much, lost too much, but Evelyn had her own ghosts. She told him about her younger brother, who never came back from Afghanistan, how she'd spent years trying to fill that silence with work. In her eyes, Gabriel saw a reflection of himself, broken pieces that somehow fit together. One crisp afternoon, they visited the site of the crash together. The grass had grown back, hiding the scars of fire. Evelyn stood quietly, then whispered, "That day, I thought it was the end, but maybe it was a beginning." Gabriel didn't reply, but something inside him cracked open, a space for hope long forgotten. Over the following months, their connection deepened. Evelyn helped Harper with her school art projects, teaching her how to capture beauty in everyday things. Gabriel began sleeping better. The nightmares still came, but they no longer swallowed him whole. Slowly, laughter replaced silence. The little family they built wasn't perfect, but it was real. Then one evening, as winter crept in, Gabriel received a letter from the Veterans Association. His disability benefits were under review, a bureaucratic nightmare that threatened the fragile balance of his world. Without that income, he couldn't afford Harper's school or their rent. The fear returned like a familiar shadow. He didn't tell Evelyn at first, but she noticed the way his hands shook when he opened bills, the way he stared into nothingness after dinner. One night, after Harper had gone to bed, Evelyn sat beside him on the porch. "You've carried too much alone," she said softly. "Let someone carry some of it with you." Gabriel's throat tightened. "I'm not good at asking for help." He whispered. "You already have," she said, placing her hand over his. "You just don't know it yet." The following week, she launched an online fundraiser without telling him, sharing his story. A veteran, a single father, a man who saved a stranger and expected nothing in return. Within days, donations flooded in. People wrote messages thanking him for his service, for his bravery, for reminding them that goodness still existed in the world. When Gabriel found out, he was furious at first. He didn't want pity, but then he saw Harper sitting at the kitchen table, smiling as she read the kind messages aloud. "Dad," she said, "look, they think you're a hero." That night, he went out to the porch again, sat under the pale light of the moon, and cried for the first time in years, not from pain, but from release. He realized that sometimes courage isn't running into fire. Sometimes it's allowing others to love you when you feel unworthy of it. Months later, Gabriel and Evelyn started volunteering together at the local rehabilitation center for wounded veterans. They helped others who had returned from war only to face invisible battles at home. Gabriel found purpose again, not in medals or uniforms, but in showing men like him that healing was possible. Evelyn's photographs of those sessions, smiling faces, prosthetic limbs, laughter among scars, went viral, sparking conversations about unseen courage across the nation. One spring morning, the same road that once carried flames and fear now bloomed with wildflowers. Gabriel parked his truck nearby, holding Evelyn's hand as Harper chased butterflies across the field. The air was warm, peaceful. Evelyn looked at him and said, "Funny how saving a stranger ended up saving you." He smiled, the corners of his eyes soft with gratitude. "No," he said quietly, "you both saved me." If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Every interaction helps spread hope and remind the world that kindness still matters, and that even in our darkest moments, compassion can rewrite our story. And before you go, I have a special request. Comment below what unseen courage means to you, because sometimes the bravest acts are the ones no one ever notices, except the hearts they change forever.